Well, there's always been a lot of pressure not to take the subject seriously. Of course, there's a lot of pressure not to take a lot of subjects seriously. We laugh in the face of that pressure, so we have always taken it seriously.
Good morning. My name is David Schindele. I'm a retired Air Force captain, and I'm very proud to have served my country. My commander was told by the OSI that we were to forever keep our lips zipped about the incident. And he was told that, as far as you're concerned, it never happened. We were even instructed to never talk to each other again about the incident. Now I'm about to inform you of one of those prior UFO incidents that did indeed impact national security. It was an incident that I was involved with, where I had to deal with its ramifications. There has been a long history of UFO incidents and encounters, with much investigation of them from 1947 and even earlier.
Well, a group of former military personnel gathered in the nation's capital today and made a lot of interesting statements about UFOs. Now, these are former government employees, and they have firsthand evidence of these unknown objects interacting with and shutting down our nuclear weapons facility. We've got details on that from someone who covered that conference today. We'll be right back. Ooh, another UFO segment. That's crazy. You'd have to be crazy to believe that's possible. Really? Is it any crazier than what's coming out of, say, your average White House briefing? No, it really isn't. So with that in mind, a fascinating conference today about UFOs and nuclear weapons. It took place in Washington. At it, a U.S. Air Force captain called David Schindele said he was part of an incident in which a UFO disabled 10 nuclear ICBM missiles. Here's part of what he said.
There has been a long history of UFO incidents and encounters, with much investigation of them from 1947 and even earlier. In September of 1966, I was the Minuteman ICBM launch control officer and deputy commander of a launch crew stationed at Minot Air Force Base, North Dakota. I was involved in a UFO incident at that time where a flying object tampered with and took down a total of 10 nuclear-tipped ICBM missiles by rendering them unlaunchable.
Tom Rogan is one of the rare serious journalists, actual journalists, in Washington who's been on this story for years in a very rigorous way. Tom, thanks a lot for coming on. So what did you learn today at this event?
Thanks, Tucker. Yeah, I think the key point here is that although these gentlemen have been telling their stories for a while, now they are doing it in a fashion where they can finally be taken seriously by more people. And fortunately, there weren't that many journalists there today, but there were more perhaps than there have been. I think the key point, though, is that people with some of the highest security clearances at the height of the Cold War for the US Air Force, multiple different individuals at multiple different sites across a period of decades, say that UFOs interacted with nuclear weapons platforms and either rendered them inoperable or took them offline. And so something was done by a technological force, as these officers would suggest, that cannot be explained. And that in and of itself surely should be big news worthy of serious further investigation.
Well, by definition, I mean, any force that can take America's nuclear weapons offline is something you need to worry about. Presumably the Pentagon has been looking at this, assessed it. Have they given any indication of what they think happened?
What's, I think, unfortunate, and I guess we're at the start of a process, you know, the Director of National Intelligence had this report, but what's unfortunate is the government does know that there is a nuclear connection. They've kept that classified. Frankly, I can understand why some of it is classified, but they should come clean with a lot more that they know. I mean, the simple fact, right, the US Navy, why does the Navy keep seeing these things with the aircraft carriers? Well, aircraft carriers are nuclear powered. Why do submarines see them? Nuclear connection. This nuclear missile incidents from the Cold War, there's credible testimony from a great historian on this, Robert Hastings, who wrote a book, UFOs and Nukes, to suggest that the Soviets had similar experiences.
Yes.
Something is going on here. It's not America, it's not China, it's not Russia, and we need to get a grip and take it seriously instead of laughing it off as an issue for crazy people.
Right. I mean, there are a lot of crazy people in this world right now. I would say the people who take this seriously may be among the least crazy in our public conversation, and you're certainly in that category.
Right.
Tom Rogan, appreciate your coming on tonight and covering this. Thank you.
It all began for me early one morning when having breakfast and listening to a television newscast by a TV station in the town of Minot. The newscaster announced that residents of Minot, North Dakota saw strange lights west of town that night, which they attributed to a UFO. This caught my attention because I was scheduled to replace the current Minuteman launch crew at November Flight Launch Control Center. When I attended the pre-departure crew briefing on base that morning, we were told that a few missiles at November Flight had gone off alert, but nothing more was said on this. After the briefing, several missile crews came up to me and mentioned about what they heard on the news that morning. And my crew commander also acknowledged he heard the news. When my crew commander and I arrived at November Flight Launch Control Facility, upon entering the rear door of the building, I was met by the site manager, who was a tech sergeant. And he asked if I heard what happened overnight. I responded by stating I knew that residents of Minot reported sighting strange lights during the night. He then took me to the day room and its west-facing windows, and he described to me what he and others had seen that night. He described a large object just outside the perimeter fence with bright flashing lights, but without noise, and it hovered close to the ground. I estimated the object to be 80 to 100 feet wide. After many minutes passed, the object then glided to the north end of the building and out of sight. But it then became visible to security guards in the control section of the building. The object, which hovered just outside the main gate, was slightly blocked from view because of the large garage located inside the fence to the right. With security and other personnel viewing the object through security control windows, and with security personnel preferring to remain in the building, it was just a short period of time before the object abruptly took flight, and it disappeared within a second. There were 8 people topside within the building who saw this object. They all confirmed it was a terrifying experience to behold, which I could tell by the tone in their voices and expressions on their faces. My commander and I then entered the elevator next to the security center, which lowered us 60 feet below ground to where the hardened launch control center capsule was located. When we arrived, the blast door to the capsule was open for us, and we walked in. We were greeted by the 2 officers of the launch crew who were waiting for us, but we also immediately glanced at the launch control console located at the opposite end of the room, which displayed the status of the 10 nuclear-tipped missiles. With the missiles positioned in hardened underground secure silos.